Welcome to my sci-fi stories. If you love thrilling sci-fi tales, subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss an adventure. Let's get into it. The once proud fortress of Iridan now lay in ruin. Smoke rose from collapsed towers and shattered walls, while the red banners of the Solmara Empire had been torn down, replaced by the silver and blue sigils of Velmara. The scent of ash, blood, and burning wood hung heavy in the air as victorious Velmaran soldiers moved through the wreckage, gathering their wounded and tending to the dead. Bodies of both factions littered the battlefield, some still smoldering from Magitech explosions, others frozen in place from Solmara's enchanted counterattacks. The cost of victory was evident. A third of Velmara's forces had perished in the assault. Marcus stood at the highest vantage point of the fortress, his rifle slung over his back, his armor scorched from battle. His gaze swept over the field of war, his mind calculating the next move. Nearby, Mike removed his helmet, exhaling sharply. His combat armor was dented and smeared with blood, some of it his, most of it not. "Hell of a fight," he muttered, watching as Velmaran troops secured the last remaining sections of the fortress. Marcus didn't answer immediately. His thoughts were on what came next. "This was just the beginning," he finally said, his voice low. "Solmara isn't going to let this go unanswered." Mike nodded grimly. "No, they won't." Below them, in the makeshift infirmary set up in the fortress courtyard, Dr. Catelyn Morgan and her medical team worked tirelessly. Velmaran's soldiers groaned in pain as they were laid onto crude cots, their wounds being dressed by a combination of modern medicine and magic-infused healing. Mages chanted incantations, sealing wounds with energy, though the strain was evident on their faces. Healing magic, while powerful, had its limits. Blood pooled on the stone floors, the result of hours of triage and emergency treatment. Catelyn moved quickly between the wounded, barking orders. "More pressure on that wound. We need to stop the bleeding before he goes into shock." A young Velmaran healer knelt beside her, hands trembling as she channeled a weak restoration spell over a dying knight. The spell flickered. Weak. "Focus," Catelyn said, placing a firm hand on the girl's shoulder. "You have the power, but you're hesitating. Don't think, just feel the energy flow." The girl nodded, swallowing her fear. She took a deep breath, steadied her hands, and this time the healing light burned brighter. The knight's labored breathing eased. Catelyn gave a nod of approval before moving to the next patient. For now, they were holding. But for how long? Hours later, as the fires of battle died down, King Alden himself arrived at Fort Iridan, escorted by a contingent of royal guards and battle mages. The Velmaran troops saluted as he entered, but Alden's gaze remained fixed on the battlefield, on the bodies, on the cost. As he dismounted, Marcus and his crew gathered in what was once the Solmara war room. A massive stone table sat in the center, still covered with Solmara's battle maps and tactical documents. The king studied them for a moment before turning to Marcus, Ryan, and Mike. "This is a turning point," Alden said, his voice calm but firm. "Never before has Velmara dared to strike at Solmara's core. You have done what no other has done." Ryan leaned back against a stone pillar, smirking. "Yeah, well, I don't think they're going to send us a thank you letter." Alden's expression darkened. "No, they will come for us with everything they have." Mike crossed his arms. "Then we hit them before they can regroup." The king raised an eyebrow. "You propose another offensive?" Marcus stepped forward, his hands bracing against the war table. "We don't just fight battles, we fight wars. If we give them time to prepare, they'll drown us in numbers. We need to strike fast and hit hard." Kevin Scott, who had been sifting through captured Solmara intelligence documents, looked up. "We intercepted something during the assault, orders signed by their emperor himself." He tossed a scroll onto the table, the wax seal of the Solmara Empire broken. Alara picked it up, her silver eyes narrowing as she read. "This isn't just retaliation," she murmured. "They're preparing something much worse." Alden's voice was grave. "What do you see?" Alara's fingers traced the words, her voice laced with unease. "The Emperor has summoned the Black Order." A long silence filled the war room. Ryan finally broke it. "Okay, what the hell is the Black Order?" Alara closed her eyes. "They are not an army. They are not even human in the way you understand it. They are Solmara's enforcers. Each one is as strong as 100 men, and their leader is a monster in human skin." Marcus exhaled slowly. Let me guess, that's our next problem, Alara nodded. And he is already on his way. Far to the east, at the edge of Solmara's territory, a massive black warship sailed across an enchanted river, cutting through the mist like a phantom. At its bow stood a figure clad in jet-black armor, a long crimson cape flowing behind him. His face was hidden beneath a featureless silver mask, but his eyes, his burning golden eyes, pierced the night. This was High Inquisitor Malakar, leader of the Black Order. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the deck with chilling authority. They have taken what is ours. They believe themselves untouchable. He slowly unsheathed a jagged, rune-covered greatsword, the weapon humming with dark energy. We shall remind them why the Solmara Empire bows to no one. The Black Order's soldiers knelt in unison, their enchanted armor gleaming under the pale moonlight. The hunt had begun. Back at Fort Iridan, Marcus and his team weighed their options. The fortress was secured, but Solmara would return. The Black Order was an unknown threat, but a deadly one, and Velmara needed time to mass-produce more Magitech weaponry. A decision had to be made. King Alden turned to Marcus. The Black Order is coming. Do we hold our ground, or do we move first? Marcus exhaled, his eyes cold and calculating. We don't wait for the storm. We bring the storm to them. The war was far from over. It was only just beginning. The air was thick with tension as the Velmaran War Council gathered within the fortress stronghold of Iridan. Torches flickered along the stone walls, casting long shadows over the war table, where a map of Solmara's eastern border was spread out. Marcus, Mike, Ryan, King Alden, and Alara stood at the center, their expressions grim as they calculated their next move. Velmara had just won a historic battle, but their real enemy was still coming. Alara placed a gloved hand over the map, her silver eyes flicking toward Marcus. The Black Order is unlike anything we've faced before. They are not just elite warriors. They are legends made flesh, nightmares given form. Ryan, arms crossed, let out a slow breath. They can't be invincible. Alara's gaze didn't waver. That depends on what you define as invincible. She tapped a point on the map, a location deep in the Solmara-controlled Deadlands, where no army had dared to march. This is where they were last seen. If they move at full speed, they will reach us in 2 days. Mike leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Then we don't give them 2 days. Marcus nodded. We strike first. Far from Fort Iridan, in the haunted wastelands of Solmara's eastern reaches, a legion of warriors clad in shadow marched in absolute silence. Their black armor shimmered unnaturally, its surface forged from a metal not of this world. Their capes, embroidered with crimson sigils, billowed as they moved, each step too perfectly synchronized, too unnatural. They were not like other soldiers. They were the Black Order, the Emperor's personal enforcers. At their forefront strode High Inquisitor Malakar, the Emperor's hand. He was a figure of pure intimidation, his towering form draped in flowing dark robes, his ornate silver mask concealing his face. Behind him marched his 5 dreadlords, each one a master of war and magic, each one a force unto themselves. Dreadlord Vashal, the Phantom Blade, a swordsman so fast his strikes could not be seen by the naked eye. Dreadlord Iskara, the Bone Witch, a necromancer capable of raising entire armies of the dead. Dreadlord Kaler, the Storm Tyrant, a battle mage who could conjure lightning storms at will. Dreadlord Zephon, the Void Walker, a shadow assassin who could slip between dimensions. Dreadlord Morvel, the Iron Juggernaut, a towering warrior clad in enchanted armor that no blade or bullet could pierce. Malakar's golden eyes burned beneath his mask. Fort Iridan has fallen. His voice was quiet, but the Legion heard him all the same. Velmara believes it has power. We will show them their place. A single gesture from Malakar, and the Black Order vanished into the mist. Back at Fort Iridan, the Velmaran War Council made their final preparations. Ryan, standing over a workbench littered with Magitech blueprints, slammed his fist against the table. We don't have enough Magitech weapons in full production. If we engage too soon, we'll be sending half our forces in with outdated gear. Mike shrugged. Then we fight smart. The plan was set. Ryan's artillery division would set up an ambush at the rocky pass leading toward Fort Iridan. Alara and her battle mages would create an illusion, making it seem like Fort Iridan was still weakened. Mike and the Magitech strike team would hit the Black Order from behind, forcing them into a pincer. We force them into a kill zone, Marcus stated, his voice firm. "They think they're coming to slaughter us. We turn the tables." King Alden, after a long pause, finally nodded. "Do it." 2 days later, at the rocky pass near Fort Iridan, the Velmaran forces waited. Ryan adjusted his Thunderstrike cannons, the barrels humming with latent energy. "They're coming." Marcus peered through his tactical scope, scanning the thick fog rolling in over the valley below. Then they saw them. A black tide of warriors, moving like phantoms through the mist. Not a single war cry, not a single wasted movement. The Black Order marched in eerie silence. Then they stopped. Marcus frowned. Why did they? Malakar raised his hand, and the Black Order turned to face them. "Shit!" Marcus' eyes widened. "They knew we were here." The trap was useless. Malakar's golden gaze locked onto Marcus. "Burn them." A wave of fire erupted from the dreadlords, consuming the trees, the sky, the ground, turning the battlefield into an inferno. Ryan grabbed his comms, shouting, "We need to fire! Now!" The Thunderstrike cannons roared. The first shot hit the ground before the Black Order, sending debris flying. The second shot struck directly into the enemy line, disintegrating a row of Black Order knights. For the first time, they hesitated. Mike took that moment. "Strike team now!" The Magitech strike team surged forward, flanking the Black Order from behind. Magitech rifles blazed with energy rounds, cutting down soldiers with precision. But then Malakar moved. One moment, he was standing at the center of the battlefield. The next, he was in front of Ryan. Ryan barely had time to react. Malakar's hand shot out, gripping his throat. Pathetic. With a flick of his wrist, Malakar hurled Ryan across the battlefield, slamming him into a boulder. Marcus opened fire, but Malakar deflected every shot with a flick of his sword. And then the Dreadlords entered the fight. Dreadlord Kalar raised his hands, summoning a storm so fierce that Velmaran troops were thrown from their feet. Dreadlord Vashal moved like a ghost, his sword slicing through Magitech armor like paper. Dreadlord Iskara whispered, and the dead soldiers of Fort Iridan rose once more, turning against their former allies. Dreadlord Zephon vanished into the void, appearing behind soldiers and cutting them down before they even knew he was there. Dreadlord Morvel walked through the battlefield, an unstoppable force, Magitech bullets bouncing off his enchanted armor. Malakar appeared before Marcus, his greatsword raised. "You should have stayed hidden." He brought the sword down. Marcus barely blocked it, his energy blade screeching against the cursed metal. "We need to retreat," Ryan gasped, barely able to stand. "This isn't a battle. We're outmatched." Mike gritted his teeth, covering Caitlin and the medics. "Fall back to the fortress." Marcus pushed off Malakar, firing a concussive blast to create distance. "Go, now!" The Velmaran forces began a fighting retreat. As they pulled back toward Fort Iridan, Malakar stood at the center of the battlefield, watching them flee. He turned to his dreadlords. "Let them run. We will take their kingdom soon enough." The Black Order had arrived, and the war had just begun. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, share with fellow sci-fi fans, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of the journey. Stay tuned for more adventures. Here is another video I know you will enjoy.